Good morning. I see several people jumping on the line all at once. So the broadcast line is now open. Welcome to the Denver South Commuting with you post shelter in place. We will get started in just another minute here. Please be aware this is being recorded and will be available on the Denver South transportation page this afternoon. So thank you for joining us, and we're going to give it just another minute here and then we will get started. You are muted to reduce your background noise. And also, if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. Good morning. If you're just joining us, thanks for joining the Denver South Commuting in Denver South Post Shelter in Place webinar. We have several people joining right now. We're going to give it one more minute and then we will get started. Please know this is being recorded and will be available this afternoon on our website at denversouthedp.org on the Transportation tab. And if you have any questions for our panelists today, please submit those through the Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen. All right, well, it is 11:02. We thank all of you for your time today, and we want to be respectful of your time in joining us for this webinar that we have put together with some helpful information for all of you. We're going to go ahead and get started now. Mayor Millet, who is chair of the Denver South Transportation Management Association, go ahead.
Thank you, Cheryl, and good morning, everyone, and thank you for joining us. As was stated, I am Jackie Millet, Mayor of the City of Lone Tree, and have the honor of chairing the Denver South TMA. So first and foremost, we're going to ask you for your patience as we work through this webinar. Many of us are not as familiar with Zoom, and we might have a few glitches here and there, but just have patience and stay with us. So as we carefully reopen offices and businesses along the Denver South corridor, we thought it would be worthwhile to start discussing what our commute may look like, the great news, what we've learned about working remotely, and why it's important for us to continue minimizing single occupancy vehicle commuting trips as we reopen. Before the panel begins, I'd like to provide a brief background on the Denver South TMA. We are a partnership of public and private entities who have come together to identify and develop transportation solutions to enhance mobility and drive economic development along the Denver South I-25 corridor. Our priority is to improve mobility and transportation options and to foster employment growth and economic prosperity. So lofty goals, but we know we can do it. So with that, I want to turn it back over to Cheryl, and she will introduce the panel. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Mayor Millet. Again, we have some great content today. You can go ahead to the next slide, Alex. Joining us as our panelists, Mayor Jackie Millet, City of Lone Tree Mayor, and the chair of the Denver South PMA, Pauletta Tonilius, RTD Assistant GM of Communications. And we are so grateful for your time today, as we know you are incredibly busy, even working from home, incredibly busy. Your team has been present and on calls with us throughout. So we appreciate your time today. And also myself, I'll be facilitating the TELEWORK best practices and sharing some really exciting survey data that we've been collecting. Daniel Hutton, the managing director of the Denver South TMA, is also helping us today. He'll be facilitating the Q&A section. So we really want to just set the table a little bit. We recognize that the new normal is abnormal to all of us, and we really want to be, we do not want to be tone deaf to the current situation and the seriousness of the pandemic. But we also need to recognize that as we re-enter the workplace, things are going to look differently, short-term and long-term, on how we commute, how we move our people, how we get to and from work. That's all going to feel a lot different for many of us, as it already is. We received a lot of great questions in advance. We want to get to those at the end of each of the panelists. We'll have some time set aside for Q&A, and you can again submit those. Daniel will be monitoring those. And with that, I am going to dive in and turn this over to Pauletta. Again, thanks for your time today, Pauletta. We are all so excited to hear the information you're going to be sharing.
Well, thank you so much, Cheryl. First of all, I appreciate being included. It is great to be joining you, Daniel, and Mayor Millet. It's an honor. We have been very busy, but everyone has been busy, and everyone has been trying to figure out this new normal, right? I like to talk about it as we're literally building the plane as we're flying it, because this came without a lot of rules, and it didn't come with an instruction guide on how we deal with COVID-19. And so I'm going to share with you just real quickly some of what RTD has been doing internally and externally, and then how we're looking to march forward as we try to get the region moving again. Next slide, please. So internally, it was really important for us to get our act together as best we could as we started to see the coronavirus pandemic really take shape. And it came on so quickly. I think a lot of us followed it, but until it really hit the United States and this region, this state, I don't think any of us saw ourselves jumping into it as quickly as we had to. So internally, we had to go ahead and think about our internal business and develop a number of policies that we needed to direct our employees on how we were going to basically move forward. We came up with emergency leave policies, telecommuting policies, which I know we're going to talk about here in just a few minutes. At RTD, we really haven't done telecommuting. And so this has been very new for all of us to take on this new way of working. We came up with a use of face covering policies, which right now we require all of our employees when working in the public realm and on duty to wear a mask or a face covering. We also have our riders as well, but I'll get to that in just a second. Many different policies on how we were going to direct our staff. And then also providing protective equipment. That came on at the same time. So how could we get our hands on enough masks, face coverings, cleaning supplies? Clorox and Lysol wipes were almost immediately a very treasured item, right? And we couldn't get these items in. Hand sanitizer, but we cobbled together what we could. We put in orders immediately, and then we were supposed to be receiving orders, and they kept getting pushed out. And then they were prioritized, rightfully so, for healthcare professionals and folks who are working in hospitals and medical facilities. So we had to continue to try to find a way to get creative. And also, how we respect social distancing. This term of social distancing, none of us, I think, really even had it in our vocabulary until a couple months ago, but we had to try to figure out what does social distancing mean and how do we put parameters into place for that in our common areas here within our facilities. Also, as I mentioned, the telecommuting, just a whole different world, with the exception of some of our telephone information center agents within our customer care department, which is within my Department of Communications. With the exception of those folks, all the rest of us in the communications department have been working from home. Even half of our TIC, our Telephone Information Center agents. So that's been very different. We're very lucky that we had a cloud-based system to allow our customer care agents to work remotely. So that was a real benefit to us. And then to keep everybody updated, what I personally do every day, every weekday, is I send an email to all of our RTD board of directors and to all of our RTD employees. And for the employees that don't have an RTD email account, many of our operators don't, we print those and those get posted on the bulletin boards in the facilities, and we are able to keep them informed. We also have a recorded message every day that they can call in and get. And then we try to honor our employees, our frontline workers, and we've done a few campaigns. The pictures that you see is really more of an outward facing campaign, but in order to tribute our people who are on the front line as essential workers with our Everyday Heroes campaign. Next slide, please. Several things that we're doing externally is, again, right from the get-go, we started cleaning our vehicles every day. All of our buses and our light rail trains, our commuter rail trains are wiped down with an EPA grade solution that disinfects all of the surfaces on our vehicles. We also, when possible throughout the day, try to have people wiping down handrails and handles and common surfaces within these vehicles when they're in a layover period. We also have rear door boarding. So we implemented rear door boarding to provide more social distancing and protection for our operators. And we have these plastic chains that also are behind our operators and the wheelchair securement area that provides more of a protection for our operators who are really in an at-risk role. We also are limiting the number of people that we have on our vehicles. And this is one where we really need the public to be our partners in this. We're limiting to 15 riders on our standard buses, 20 riders on our larger buses, 30 people on our rail cars, and ask people to please respect that. And as we have reduced our service levels, that's been more of a challenge, but we continue to monitor this. We stage our extra buses in areas of our more popular bus routes so that when we're starting to get to capacity, we can dispatch and feed those buses into the mix to pick up the additional folks. And then we also have our transit police trying to the best of their ability to uphold our customer code of conduct as much as possible, which does not allow people to sleep on our vehicles or to take up more than one seat. We ask people through the code of conduct to deboard at the end of lines and at the end of routes. That doesn't happen all the time, so they're out here as well. Next slide. So partners in safety is a big thing, and this has been one of our biggest messages to the public, is we really have to rely on each other for safety in order to work. So we are asking riders to only take essential trips. We are urging our passengers to what is practicable for us to please wear a mask or a face covering. And this is to protect all of us, individuals and each other. And also just the regular hygiene processes that we're all promoting. We ask people not to board if a vehicle stops and it looks like it has too many people on board on our popular bus routes. Again, another bus is coming shortly after, to please respect social distancing. And we want people to use good judgment and personal responsibility when we're out there, because there's only so much of this we're able to enforce in the public realm. Next slide. So we did implement our COVID-19 service plan on April 19th. This significantly reduces our level of service. I won't go through each one of these points. You can see it on the screen. But these are things that we had to do to really reflect the significant decrease in ridership that we were seeing. But we still are carrying about 120,000 passenger trips a day. Typically, it's about 375 on a normal weekday, but we're currently moving a lot of people. And so with that comes the challenge of making sure people are safe out there with social distancing. We also are evaluating our ridership. We will continue to do this as more and more people start to get back to work and move around the region and public activity. We'll continue to monitor our operation and look at when is the right time to add service back and where. And all of this is available on our website under our service areas, so you can get the specifics about routes. Next slide, please. So as it relates to the Southeast region, which many of you, of course, are most interested in, you can see on the screen the impacts to the service in the Southeast area. Again, we are closely monitoring and seeing where we might need to add service back gradually. That will, I expect, ramp up more so in the next month or so. Next slide. And our Flex Ride and Access-a-Ride, that continues. Flex Ride, however, reservations are really being treated right now on an individual basis, but it is still available. Our assessor ride service, still available for people who are our current paratransit customers. One really cool thing that we did, and this came from our paratransit staff, was we started grocery delivery for our current paratransit customers, and that has really been a great service to them, so they don't have to go out to the grocery store. We have our assessor ride bringing their groceries to them when they present the order to the grocery store or the food bank. Next slide. So we have developed a pandemic recovery plan. This is for how we're going to try to ramp back up internally and externally at RTD. And this is going to be a work in progress. This is a working document, but it literally is a matrix of everything, of decision criteria of how we're going to address things with employees, with adding back service in our facilities, when we're going to start allowing visitors and other outside vendors to come into our facilities and how that's going to work. Also, how we're going to move forward with directives to our passengers. This is a 4-phase process that is phased in timeframes: May, June, summer, and fall, in different decision-making criteria that we're going to be using. And this matrix was really put together with the best guidance and practices that we've learned from officials at CDC, at the World Health Organization, our local and state public health and environment departments, for us to come up with at least a framework of how we're going to recover. Next slide, please. And you see on the screen some of the various things that we are looking at as key points to help guide us as we recover. So for instance, as we look to monitor our ridership and gradually add service back, one thing that's really important to us is achieving at least 14 consecutive days of decreasing positive cases across the region before we even think about bringing people back into the office. And that would be up with what the governor has directed at up to the 50% level. Also continuing to telecommute where it's possible and doing virtual meetings. We have seen that much of it is successful, and many of our different units are having success at telecommuting. I will tell you personally, it's been a challenge for me as a communicator. I'm a social animal, so I miss the social interaction. And but I will say that I think, and you guys will talk about this, that there will be value in more of us telecommuting as we move forward. Again, some of the same things I talked about already that we'll continue to use as criteria moving forward. Our internal tracking of our own employee cases. When people travel or start to feel symptoms, we have checklists that were developed that supervisors and managers use to ask their people before they're coming back to work. And then of course, continuing with the daily cleaning of our vehicles, which is one of the biggest things we hear from people is, are you cleaning your vehicles daily? How long is the fare going to be free? We get these questions a lot. We can talk about some of that later. Next slide. And then my team has really been pushing information out in many different ways. Our website, our mobile app, social media are really great ways for you to stay informed about RTD. Literally, this information changes daily, and we keep our website updated. We have a dedicated COVID-19 webpage where we keep everything that we're doing. And we also are trying to lighten the load a little bit for people and giving people a diversion with some of our social media campaigns. We have a virtual experience social media campaign where we are asking people to kind of take a minute and think about those destinations that they can't go to physically right now that are accessible by RTD Transit, and give them a little break in the day to kind of visit those destinations online and through social media. So we're doing all we can to also help lift spirits during this time. Next slide. Federal stimulus package, we're fortunate that we've learned that we will be able to benefit from $232 million through the Federal CARES Act. This is to help us offset the significant losses that were experienced experiencing right now from not collecting fares, and also sales tax revenues that have really gone in the tank. And that's something I know everybody is experiencing. These funds can be used on a reimbursement basis as we expend funds for anything related to COVID, even operations and labor, trying to keep people employed, cleaning supplies, protective equipment, that type of thing. Next slide. And then just lastly, I'll finish off with just what some of our ongoing challenges are, and we know that, and we're planning for it. It's the continued shortage of masks and face coverings, even though we have enough to provide all of our employees right now, especially our operators. We are hanging on to what we have because we aren't sure what will happen to the supply chain down the road. Riders not respecting social distancing and wearing masks. This is a challenge for us. And again, it's about personal responsibility, and we hope people respect this. Also, we want people to ride the system as it's intended and deboarding at the end of a line or at the end of a route. And we've seen more and more homeless and transient people ride our system since we haven't been collecting fares. This is an ongoing challenge for us. Also, we're continuing to look at how do we maintain those capacities on our vehicles, the financial impacts, and then again, just urging riders to the greatest extent possible of what is practicable for RTD to please practice safety and be our partners in safety. So that is what I have for now, and happy to answer any questions later.
Great information, Pauletta. Thank you so much. We did have a few questions that were sent in advance, and one of them actually comes from Inside RTD. Pauletta, can you please explain the pandemic recovery response matrix? The listed decision criteria has caused some confusion among employees.
Yeah, and I can see why, and I'm happy to answer that question. So the pandemic recovery plan, which was put together by our safety and security team, as I mentioned earlier, is based on guidance from the various health professionals, and we then took it to the level of what made sense for RTD. We're a little more conservative than what some of the guidance is because, again, we're not trying to bring people back into our facilities sooner than we think is wise. What it's going to entail is regular updates, sharing this with our employees, making sure they understand what they're supposed to do for folks who've been working from home. For those who've been working in our facilities, it's going to be continuing the processes we already are moving forward with. When people are in common areas, in hallways, in break rooms, not being right next to each other, wearing masks within our facilities. This is part of the pandemic plan criteria, but it will be a working document and it will change, and to the best of our ability, we are going to lay that information out internally and externally as warranted. I hope that helps.
Yeah, that was very helpful. And then, have staffing levels improved? Are permanent reduced routes expected?
Great question. So as I mentioned, we're at a much reduced service level right now, and we will make decisions on where to add service back as it makes sense and as it's practical because of us wanting to maintain social distancing. If we have certain routes, which we know we do, that have a tendency to be more crowded, those will likely get more service sooner. It is really going to depend on what happens with the region. What we continue to hear is many people are not ready to bring their folks back to work. In the downtown area, however, we hear that a lot of our partners in downtown Denver and in different business districts are wanting to bring their people back to work as quickly as possible. And so again, some of this is really going to be a learning experience for all of us. We ask the public, our elected official partners and key stakeholders like Denver South to be patient with us and to provide us with relevant feedback that we can actually do something with to make good decisions. But it's about making sound decisions in the spirit of safety, but knowing that gradually increasing service is going to have some bumps in the road, but it's going to literally have to be a work in progress.
Yeah. Daniel, I think we've got time for one more question. I saw we had several questions coming in, so we will try to get to everyone's questions at the end. I think we're going to have some time on the back end. But Daniel, you want to share the question that I saw come through?
Sure. Yeah, Pauletta, so the first question, when will RTD fairs be implemented again?
That's a good question. We're asked that a lot. We are actually in the process of doing our round of telephone town hall meetings with each of our RTD board director districts, and Director Mahalik, who represents your area. I think he's even on the webinar right now. His meeting will be coming up, and we are getting that question a lot. That is one of the most common questions we're getting. When are you going to start collecting fares again? We aren't sure. Some of this is going to depend on how the region starts to move again. Obviously, this is a big revenue loss for us. When we're collecting fares, it's about $12 million a month for us. What we're going to try to do is implement our fares at the first of a month. It might be the 1st of June. Maybe it's the 1st of July, but for many reasons, it really helps us to do it at the 1st of the month because of how we're going to have to disperse the monthly passes now. And so my guess is we'll probably do it at the beginning of a month, and it may be the beginning of June, might be the beginning of July. We just aren't sure yet.
Well, we know you'll share the information when that decision is made.
Absolutely.
And we'll continue to help push that out. Great. Well, thank you again, Pauletta. We'll try to circle back at the end and have time for more questions because you're quite popular and you're getting lots of questions coming through. So Alex, let's go ahead and shift gears. So obviously the teleworking world is right in front of us all. It might have been forced via the pandemic, but the reality is it's one thing when one person in your office is working from home, but when your entire office is uprooted and you're all forced to work from home, things change, and it has changed for all of us. And so we really just want you to understand that, you know, Denver South has long advocated for telework as a congestion mitigation and an air quality improvement strategy. But now this is a reality because organizations, this is like the biggest beta test we've ever experienced. So just a little levity, this is our Monday morning staff meeting, and I'm quite sure, I won't name any staff members if you're on the line, but I think we could X out many, many, many of these on the telework bingo card. So just to have a little bit of fun, I think we are all experiencing this together. Next slide, please. So pulling back a little bit, we really wanted to bring not just it's convenient, the highways are not crowded, look at the air quality, which we're going to elaborate on a little bit later, but there are some significant benefits. If you look at the larger picture of a potential, you know, flexible work schedule, teleworking 1 to 2 days a week, just really as cited from the Government Accountability Office, just looking at that continuity of operations, which we have all successfully been able to keep our organizations, RTD, City of Lone Tree, we are all still functioning and making decisions as organizations. So I applaud all of our partners in Denver South, but really wanted to bring to the forefront some of the reduced costs and the savings and the positive impacts. But with that, next slide please, comes challenges. And I think we are all in this one together, looking at some of the challenges. Top on, I was just reading a report yesterday, the biggest challenge as quoted in a Newsweek article is internet connectivity and bandwidth, which I know with 3 teens at home, all of us trying to be on Zoom calls and learning from home, it is a challenge. So we recognize that, and I think we're going to see some trends and opportunities in that arena as this trend is of teleworking is continued. Another high-ranking challenge is that social disconnection from your teams, from being able to collaborate and run down the hall and ask somebody their opinion on something. So that social interaction and culture is a big challenge. And, you know, difficulty concentrating, that work-life balance, that battle is real. It is, we are challenged daily with it. It is so easy to be distracted or run upstairs for lunch and start a load of laundry. So there are definitely challenges that we recognize as we go through this with you. Next slide. So looking into some of the data, 1/3 of workers would take a pay cut of up to 5% if they were able to work remotely some of the time, not all full time, but part of the time. Flexibility is ranked as one of the highest benefits by millennials, and that outscored student loan or tuition reimbursement, which I thought was fascinating. It also provides employers to build that trust and have increased productivity in a flexible environment. The reports and studies show that productivity is actually increasing due to the fact people unfortunately are working earlier and later, and they're always plugged in. So that productivity, hopefully there's not too much burnout going on, but that is significant as well. And then using this as a tool for retention and recruitment, not just your future employees down the road, but possibly an elderly employee that is looking to retire. If he or she could possibly work from home 2 to 3 days a week, you might be able to retain that experienced talent and keep him on your team. Next slide. And this, I want to give a shout out to Dr. Cog and Steve Erickson. He worked hard to get this data for us. This has not been shared across the board. So we were extracting data from Dr. Cog yesterday. So thank you, Steve, if you're on the call. This is from the Mile High Society of Human Resources, and they surveyed close to 5,000 employers in our region. And the results are 89% of those employers said telework policies are likely to continue after COVID-19. So we see the significance that this works. This was put in front of us and we all responded. And now organizations are looking at, is there a possibility to continue this in some fashion, to have that flexibility, to offer this as an amenity and a solution set? 71% of those people on that survey also view it more positively now, because they probably now understand, as Pauletta said, we were building the plane and trying to fly it all at the same time. And I want to kind of dive into some of those details and some best practices as we go through this. Next slide. Dr. Cog shared a data point with us. Again, thank you, Dr. Cog, and our partners there, Allison and Steve. 71%, they launched a survey post-COVID-19, and a mix of working remotely and commuting. 71% of their survey responders would like a mix, a hybrid. So I think that acknowledges we want some social interaction. We love going to lunch with our friends. But, you know, wouldn't it be nice if maybe we could have some opportunity to look at this through a different lens? IBM surveyed 25,000 employees. 40% of those are hopeful and feel strongly that it should be continued in some variation. Next slide. So what does this look like? And I am not a math whiz, but thank you, Evan, for your help on this slide. If you were to base this on a typical commute in and out of Denver South is 34 miles round trip. So cost per mile, 52 cents a mile. If you were to look at this, even just 1 day a week, you're close to $850 that you would save on your car, on your gas, on emissions. So if you did it 2 days a week, this is an average, again, almost $1,700. And then the full Monty, 5 days a week, working remotely, you would save about $4,200 a year. So definitely something that you can use moving forward as an incentive for retention, recruitment, cost savings, and reducing air quality and congestion. Next slide. Okay, so we're going to dive into some of the details now. So first and foremost, trying to set up a policy if you did not have one in place. I know a lot of organizations that I have spoken with personally, you know, where's a policy template? How do I do it? Are there rules, or what are the guidelines? Well, a lot of companies did have telework policies put in place. And if you were that employer, then everything that you had in writing, you have managed your employees' expectations. For those organizations that did not, it is important to put some type of a policy agreement in place so you can manage the expectations of your employees and you can co-create that. That's the beauty. This can be flexible. It can be worked from an employee-employer nexus, and it doesn't have to be, you know, it's not carte blanche one way or the other. You have the opportunity to be somewhat flexible with this. And then I advise you to utilize your existing resources. We have a lot of great partners, and I'm going to get into that in another slide with Dr. Cog, but Telework Tomorrow is an initiative that we're promoting with them. There's policy templates on our webpage right now from the City of Lone Tree. Thank you, Lone Tree. And a couple other organizations, AACOM, also a Denver South partner. So their policies, they put it out there. Our policy is out there. So don't recreate the wheel. Let some of the great work that's been done kind of guide your process. But it is important, if you didn't have a policy in place, to actively get one and then communicate and train your staff on what it looks like, what the expectations are, and make sure they have an understanding. As a communicator, it is okay to over communicate during this time. It is important to share information and manage those expectations. Technology, the hardware, the software, what are your communication tools? Zoom, Skype, GoToMeetings, Google Hangouts. But if you have a plan in place, make sure that you identify the tools and how you will continue to telework so it's sustainable for everybody. Security and VPN. I know a lot of companies with their information and people dialing into servers, it has definitely been dialed up, and it should be. So make sure that if you're going to institute a telework policy and put a plan in place, that you have the right security measures. Determining eligibility, I was on a call with our Dr. Cog leads yesterday, and the conversation about equality came up, and there is no better time right now than to discuss who is eligible. Obviously, Pauletta, someone that's driving the train, cannot telework. So there needs to be definition and clarity on who is a candidate and who is not, and how do you make that equitable for all of your organization, because it can quickly turn into, well, why does she get to work from home 2 days a week and I only get to work 1 day a week? So that is the importance of managing that communication and those expectations. Another way you can be successful is troubleshooting those problematic areas ahead of time. And that is by managing by results. It is great to turn it off for an hour in the afternoon and then come back at night. As long as I am getting my deadlines completed and I'm looking at the deliverables and the outputs and the outcomes, this is not the norm. This 8 hours in the office is, that paradigm is gone. It is shifted. And managers really need to look at how they manage their employees and how they can utilize performance measures, key performance measures, to evaluate, are your employees being productive? More than likely, they're being more productive. How do you manage their tasks, their output? I have weekly calls with the TMA, and we have tasks. We have task charts that, what are we doing? Where are we going? Is this going to be done by Friday? So we really keep each other accountable. But I think it's important to work through, as you're developing that policy, what are some potential gaps? Where are we missing the mark? What are we not considering as we institute this policy? So it's okay to be a little bit negative, because that's how you will come up with your solution set on what language you need to include. And then test it out. I mean, as Pauletta said, we are all figuring this out together. Test it out. It's a work in progress. If something's not working, communicate and address it with those employees and employers. But remember that you have to be flexible, but you also need to evaluate it frequently. And then you adjust as needed. We all need to be a little bit nimble. And it's going to keep evolving. That's the beauty of teleworking, that I think, as the data pointed out, in some form, most organizations, 89%, said they would like to see this continuing forward, and they expect it to. So I think if it's done with some forethought and you put these measures into place, you can have a successful program. Next slide. So just a few additional telework best practices, and this is just, from doing research and working with our other TMA partners, and, routines encourage normalcy. It is so important that, okay, get out of your pajamas, get on your laptop by 8:30. What time are you going to start your day and end your day? Make sure your workplace is inviting and it's removed from your daily duties. I mean, I'll point out, some of us are hiding from our children. Find a space that you're comfortable working in, but that you can also focus, because focus it's very easy to get distracted. And again, communicate. Stay with your teams, your managers. I'll check in with Daniel just because, I feel disconnected. He's 2 offices down. Today we get to be in the office together, but jump on those Zoom calls. It's okay to have a touch in on a regular basis with your teams. If you're feeling disconnected, you've got to verbalize that, because we're all trying to work through and guess through this together. and share your remote hours with your team, put them on your calendars. I saw another Telework Tomorrow manager put it in her signature panel. My normal routine work remote hours are 8 to 4 or whatever it is, but just again, be vocal. And then please respect your own schedules with breaks, lunch, and end times. If you're done at 4 o'clock, be done at 4 o'clock. Jackie emailed me at 11 last night, Mayor Millet, and we were back on the phone this morning at 7. So I don't know that all of us you've got a lot of fires you're putting out right now, but if at all possible, try to respect your work-life balance and set some routines for yourself. Next slide. Again, those regular check-ins, over-communicate, and just really strive to find whatever that balance is. You need to try to work through that. And for managers and supervisors, recognize your employees are struggling too. They feel guilty if they are outside for too long when they know they're supposed to be working. So it's a push-pull. I mean, there is really a lot of spillover going on with the work life, but you have to have flexibility and you have to trust your staff. And again, I'll emphasize it again, working through results will hopefully help you pivot your mindset a little bit so we're not so punching the clock, so to speak. Next slide. And with that, I want to promote Dr. Cog's telework resources. They've done a fantastic job. They are always working with us and for us and helping us. They've launched a Telework Tomorrow campaign to continue this in some fashion. All of their tools are on our website. There's a toolkit with tutorials for Zoom, how to Skype, a checklist to get your program started. So reach out to Dr. Cog, reach out to Denver South. We partnered with them. They've also put some policies out there that we've shared on our website. So we're just super excited to partner with them on this, and we hope we can continue to move it forward. Next slide. And now I'm going to shift gears for a little bit. So all of this great work that we're doing with teleworking, in addition to increasing transit utilization, reducing single occupancy vehicles, it all is really shepherded under one umbrella. And we hope to continue this with a new initiative that we're launching. It's called the Employee Transportation Champions Program. And we are actively recruiting champions in Denver South to help promote transportation solutions. We'll give you best practices, resources, workshops, and then we want to be you as the champion, drive that information into your organization, be our liaison, help us with Bike to Work Day, help us with transportation fairs and education and telework. So we've got a lot of great information that we're going to be driving through this initiative, policies and programs that we hope to put in place with our local jurisdictions to improve that commuter experience and air quality. And as our TMA board chair, I'm going to have Jackie talk about some of the goals of this program we're so excited about.
Hey, thanks, Cheryl. I only want to correct you on one thing. I am very efficient working in my pajamas, and I don't see a reason to change out of them unless I am going to be on a Zoom call or workout clothes. I get a lot done in both of those. But I'd like everyone to imagine for a moment what it was like back in January before we were hit by this devastating pandemic. And I think we were all looking at ways to reduce single occupancy vehicle trips, commute trips in particular. And Cheryl and I had sat down and had a conversation about what it is that we might be able to do in the Denver South TMA. And the idea of this Employee Transportation Champion program was born. So if we want to just switch to the next slide quickly, I'm not seeing the goals on my screen. Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are lofty and ambitious goals, and I am not going to go through them all with you today. In the interest of time, we really just want to put them out there kind of as a FYI and as a bit of a teaser, because what we are actually looking for is whether it's you who is on the webinar with us or someone from your organization to become our champion in your workspace and place. We want you to help educate and advocate within your organization about commuting options that reduce single occupancy vehicle trips. And we have the resources, as Cheryl mentioned, for you. So if you want to just quickly move to the next slide, we're going to be having a kickoff orientation July 14th, we're calling it a lunch. We're not sure what it's going to be. We'll see how our new normal proceeds, but it will be 11:30 now. We're hoping to have it at the Denver South office, but we'll stay tuned on that. But whether it's a webinar and you have to bring your own lunch, or you show up and we might give you a little lunch, to be determined. But I think this employee transportation champion, I'm trying to get all my acronyms straight, is really an important tool and a strategy for the Denver South region to get people out of their single occupancy vehicles and onto either a telework, flexible work schedule, a bike, a bus, a train, as we begin to reopen our transit system in a more robust way. So please stay tuned, and we'd like you to please think about participating as the champion for your organization or tapping someone within your organization to do so. So again, we have the resources, we just need your time. All right, so next slide. So in addition to offering flexibility to employees, reducing congestion, improving quality of life, why else should we try and reduce car trips? And here's your hint. Governor Polis has proclaimed this to be Air Quality Awareness Week. And one of the other hats that I wear is as a member of the Regional Air Quality Council. And last December, the EPA reclassified our metro area to a serious non-attainment category based on the 2008 ozone standard. I'm not going to get into the weeds of that with you, but bottom line, additional control measures are required to reduce emissions and improve air quality in our area. And the RAC has been charged, the Regional Air Quality Council has been charged with leading that effort in our region. So next slide, please. So what is the RAC? In addition to being the lead air quality planning agency for the 9-county Denver Metro North Front Range ozone non-attainment region, it also provides important air quality planning and technical analyses. There are a number of incentive programs that have existed, and we're building more of them to reduce emissions from mobile sources and lawn and garden sources. There's a strong public education and outreach campaign, and there's a lot of information about what we can do as just citizens in our lives. So next slide, please. So I kind of mentioned this already, but one of the reasons that this is important is actually, let's just skip to the next slide to be efficiency here, is that cars are the second highest source of air, let's just make it simple, air pollution in the region. And what's emitted from our vehicles, the volatile organic compounds and the NOx create air pollution in our region. So when you don't drive, when you telecommute, when you take a bus or a train, or you eventually, when we get back, social distancing relaxes and we can commute together in a van or in your car, you make a difference with our air quality. I think one of the important things, and probably one of the few good things that have come out of this pandemic, has been an improved air quality. And that's because we're driving less. And we really want to use this as a springboard as we enter our summer season. We have a tremendous opportunity to make a difference this summer in whether or not we move into more mandatory restrictions or requirements for air emissions controls. So let's hop to the next slide, please. So the RAC is working very hard, and we have started an initiative within the RAC called the Employer Trip Reduction Program. I'm one of the co-chairs of that initiative, and it really dovetails very nicely with the work of the Denver South TMA. Our goal is to get you out of your car, whether it's by telecommuting or by transit or by walking or by biking. And there's a host of strategies to help you do that, which is part, again, of why we want you to be an employee transportation champion. So the RAC has much more detailed information, and I know Mike Silverstein, the executive director, is on this call along with Sarah Goodwin, the communications director. But we've done a lot of great work on air quality with the pandemic. Let's not lose that as we move forward. We are hard at work promoting a range of ways you can help beyond reducing car trips. So we'd love you to join with us to take some simple steps for better air. And with that, I want to save the rest of our time for questions, I think, and I'll turn it back to you, Cheryl, to coordinate that.
I'm still muted. There,
Yeah.
okay, I'm back. Hi. They're not letting me drive the buttons, just so you guys know. Probably a good thing. Hey, we do want to continue with the communication, and we are asking you to get engaged. The data is what drives the work that we do here at Denver South. So we are going to be sending out, you'll receive an email. If you would please participate, it's a quick survey, 12 questions on telework. Did your company have a policy in place? Will you continue it? Do you need help, additional resources? So we'll send this link out to you. And then Pauletta, if you want to speak to the survey you're collecting data for.
Yes, thank you very much, Cheryl. So just on Monday, we launched a very brief online survey that's available on the RTD website. If you go to the rtd-denver.com homepage, you'll see a graphic there to give us feedback. Take our survey. It takes about 5 minutes. And we want to know, have you been writing RTD services over the past month? How do you plan to ramp back up writing transit? What has to happen for you to feel safe riding transit? We want to hear from people. So we ask you to please go to our website, take our survey. It'll be active through Sunday, so through this Sunday night, and then we'll start to compile results, and that will help inform our recovery plan and us to get more specifics about some of the things we know we're going to have to do.
Excellent. And then just one final plug for that ETC program. It was initially to launch in April, and that was one of the hard decisions we had to make. We had a program in place for Constructing the Future. We canceled that event. We are hoping to get that gang back together and do a virtual Constructing the Future later in May, and then launch that ETC program in July. So we're getting our wheels under us. With that, I'm gonna open it up. Daniel, I know I see questions coming through. Go ahead, if you wanna deal those out to the appropriate panelists, that would be great.
Sure. Okay, so this one I think is originally directed at Pauletta, but we can all kind of speak to it. It's something that Denver South has discussed, and it's really about indoor air quality. So I understand that many offices are upgrading their HVAC air filters to comply with indoor air quality advice for preventing the airborne spread of COVID. One, are there similar measures for air quality on buses and trains? And two, is RTD planning on upgrading their HVAC filters in their offices to better protect the employees against COVID?
So I can start. What I can tell you is, yes, we're looking at that. We're looking at our internal HVAC systems. What can we do, especially that will serve common areas where we have more people gather? As far as our vehicles, we are actually looking at a couple of different systems that can help us in that regard. We do have the ability right now on our buses for operators to utilize fresh air flow through the systems that are on our vehicles. And so as much as we can, we are jumping into looking at air filtration and different upgrades of our systems. And also one thing that is kind of related to this, new buses that we come in, we have spec for those to have this particular light system that I want to say it's an ultraviolet light that kills viruses, and it lasts for like 90 days. And so, while we don't have those buses right now, our new buses moving forward are going to have those systems.
Great.
Okay. So continuing questions for Pauletta. Is there a plan to use mobile tickets as reservations for seats on buses and trains? Booking a ticket from Broadway to 16th, for example, for a specific train or open seat, whichever makes sense.
Well, so our mobile ticket app is a great service, and it's a great tool, and we try to push more and more people to our mobile app. When we do start to restore our fare collection, we would encourage people as much as possible to use our mobile ticketing app. That is going to be the quickest and easiest way for people to ramp back up with ridership and paying fares. I think it's also one of the safest ways to do that, given you know, that as much as you can do electronically. As far as booking trips specific, I'm wondering if this has to do with FlexRide, and we are looking to do upgrades with integrating more of our FlexRide into our information systems. So that is in a phase of our one of our systems that is currently in process. The next phase of it will involve FlexRide. So if that has to do with FlexRide service.
Great. Daniel, do you have any other questions you want to share? I think Daniel's muted, Alex. There, no.
There we go. There we go. Okay, so I guess this is for all the panelists, and it's probably too early to tell or hear about, but are you aware of any companies or organizations that have already decided to enact new teleworking policies long-term? Is that a thing yet?
Ooh, that's a tough one, Daniel. I do not, but maybe our partners at Dr. Cog, we can find out if you want to get the contact information on that question. Again, I believe it will happen quicker, sooner rather than later, but we do not have data points on that yet.
Well, I can speak anecdotally to that. The City of Lone Tree is actually an employer, and one of the most suspicious staff executive team members about the remote working or the teleworking was our police chief, and I'm ratting him out now, but he did share this with us. You know, he was concerned about effectively bringing his team together, and has really become a champion of teleworking. And when he has to have an all teams meeting, he was bringing people and staff members in, and then they would have to be there for the 1 hour meeting and then go back until their shifts were going to be starting later. So I know that as the employer, the City of Lone Tree is actually looking at ways that we can incorporating telework into our employees' schedules moving forward. And I know I've spoken to a number of the employers in our city, and they too have seen great benefits to their employees from the ability to do this. And now that they've got the infrastructure in place, I don't know that specific policies have been created yet, but I know there is actually an attitude and an appetite to continue with teleworking at some.
Okay, thank you, Mayor. Pauletta again, do you expect any delays to line openings?
Okay, well, the line opening that we'll be talking about will be the end line. So the end line is next up, and we do expect to open the end line this year. And we have said for quite some time that the next two opportunities to do that with service changes would be May or our fall service change. Well, obviously, it's not going to happen in May. Plus, I think people know we had to have work completed on that line. That's been working great. We've been making actually a lot of progress on finishing things up on the end line, including hiring our operators and training those commuter rail operators. That's on track. What we're looking at is the next opportunity is September. That is when we anticipate having another major service change, other than whenever we start to ramp service back up as necessary, given people getting back in action. But our inline, we expect to be opened sometime later this year. That is on track, and we're going to be very happy to deliver that line finally.
That's great, great news. We have about 3 minutes left, so if I had another question that came in ahead of time. So Pauletta, and you may not be able to speak to this, but the question is, what is the scientific basis for social distancing and wearing masks?
That's a great question. I'm no scientist, but what I can tell you is the distance of 6 feet seems to be the relative appropriate distance where it really minimizes the exchange of any kind of particles between people that could be shared. And I think the wearing masks is another layer. So if you don't have a mask, but you're 6 feet apart, there is that standard. But if you wear a face covering, it doubles the protection, if you will. And so that is why so many officials and different orders are asking people to wear face coverings, to just give people that extra protection. So, but I can't really answer to the filtration of particles and what have you.
I would probably defer to the CDC on that.
Yeah.
You know, the Colorado Department of Health, they would be more poised to speak to that, I would believe. Daniel, any other questions?
I have the answer to this one, so I don't want to put anybody on the spot, but what, since Bike to Work Day is normally in June, what's going to happen to Bike to Work Day?
Mm-hmm. That is actually going to be rescheduled. The exact date is September. I'm not going to say it because I don't want to misspeak, but we will be promoting and advertising the reschedule of that event, but it has been postponed until September.
But
Yeah, September 22nd, sorry.
September 22nd.
I think there's an opportunity to do a dial to work day or a clickety-clack to work day, a virtual work day that could be kind of fun. So,
and we're actually, it's funny you mentioned that because that is actually something that we're talking through, like how do this is such a great event that we all look forward to in June, but yes, definitely acknowledge a telework day or, you know, something fun. I want to wrap it up. I want to be respectful of everybody's time. Hopefully you all gained some insight into the road ahead in Denver South. This is being recorded. We will share the slide deck. We hope to get that up on our website this afternoon. Again, just a huge shout out to Mayor Millet and Pauletta. Again, I know these are trying times. I know speaking with the mayor 3 or 4 times yesterday, Park Meadows, we're all trying to get things as much as we can back to normal. So I really just want to thank my panelists for providing the insight and sharing the information. And please reach out to me at cheryl@denversouthedp.org if you have any additional questions, if you'd like to sign up to be a employee transportation champion. We appreciate you all being on the call today. And again, reach out if you have any questions or you need some telework support. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.
thank you.